Sometimes, it's not the deep woods that get you. It's the roadside diner where no one speaks, the campsite that's somehow too quiet, or the trail where your footsteps echo, but not in sync. Oregon is beautiful, but beneath the fog, the moss, and the evergreens are stories people were never meant to survive. What you're about to hear are 5 of the most disturbing true horror stories from this strange, wild state. Every account in this video is backed by public records, local reports, and direct witness testimony. Some names have been changed to protect privacy, but the events are completely real. If you believe true horror deserves to be heard, your like helps this story reach more horror lovers like you. Comment where you're watching from. You're part of my horror family, and I want to know where my family's watching from. And tell me, which story hit you hardest? Subscribe to fuel this channel and help me keep these stories alive. The first time I heard the voice, I thought I was dreaming. I'd been asleep in my tent near the edge of the dunes at Nehalem Bay, the kind of deep, bone-heavy sleep you only get after hiking alone all day in the cold. But at exactly 2:13 a.m., something pulled me out of it, a sound so faint it barely registered. It was a child's voice, a girl's. "Help me." My eyes opened into blackness, the kind of black that feels alive, damp, weighty, the kind of black you only find near the ocean after midnight. The wind had died, and even the waves were oddly quiet, but I knew I'd heard it. "Help me." That second one was closer. I unzipped the sleeping bag, hand trembling slightly from the sudden rush of adrenaline, and pulled on my boots. The zipper on the tent flap screeched like it was protesting. I stood up into the cold air, flashlight ready, scanning the dunes. Nothing. Just the thin line of the shore beyond the dune grass, the orange glow of my fire nearly gone to embers. I waited there for a good 10 minutes, listening, heart thudding, breath fogging in little clouds. But the voice didn't return. I told myself it was wind, or a dream, or maybe even a distant gull mimicking a cry. But that didn't sit right. Not with how clear it had sounded. Not with the way it had ended in a wet, gurgled whisper. I'd been out there alone for 2 nights, trying to reset after the kind of year that leaves claw marks on your brain. Job gone. Relationship gone. My dad, the only person who really understood me, passed in April. This trip was supposed to be a break from all that. Just me, the cold sand, and the dark water. During the day, Nehalem Bay looks almost friendly. Driftwood scattered like bones, the Pacific hissing and retreating in long exhalations. The trail hugs the dunes and runs parallel to the bay for miles. I'd hiked in past the horse camps and picked a remote spot away from everyone, or so I thought. No other tents, no footprints, just thick, wet sand and wind-etched grass. But I'd started noticing things. The second morning, I found a small, hand-sized clump of wet hair near my fire ring. Human, as far as I could tell. Black, tangled, and stiff with salt. The strange part was how it was placed, not blown by the wind, but gently resting, almost centered in the ring of stones, like someone had left it there for me to find. Still, I pushed it out of my head. Maybe it was washed up and blew in overnight. Maybe a raccoon dragged it over. Maybe. That's how you survive alone in the woods. You keep saying, maybe. That night, I stayed up later, not quite ready to fall asleep. I watched the fire burn low and tried to focus on the sound of the waves. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the voice came again. "Help me." But this time, it was closer. Definitely inland toward the woods, not the water. I stood up, flashlight already in hand. "Hello?" I called out. "Is someone out there?" Silence. I pushed through the dune grass, sweeping my beam through the trees. Nothing but trunks and underbrush, and the strange hush of the coastal night. Then I saw something that stopped me cold. Just past the tree line, about 20 feet in, was a small shoe, a child's canvas sneaker, red, soaked through, crusted with sand. I looked around again, harder this time. My brain flipped through possibilities. A lost family, a camper with kids, but there were no other tents, no RVs, no voices during the day. I picked up the shoe. It was soft in the middle, like it had been underwater. I carried it back to my tent and left it outside the flap, unsure what else to do. Sleep didn't come easily. I kept waking up to imagined footsteps, imagined breaths. I swear once I heard something brush against the nylon of the tent, but when I got out to check, there was nothing, just the shoe, now facing the tent like someone had turned it while I slept. The third night was worse. It rained on and off, that kind of coastal drizzle that makes everything feel older, heavier. I built my fire higher, half out of fear, half for comfort. Around midnight, I saw movement, a shape just beyond the reach of the firelight, small, low to the ground, like someone crouching. I froze, heart pounding. It didn't move again for several minutes. I thought maybe it was a log. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks. Then it stood up. It was a girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, wearing what looked like a faded green dress, clinging wet to her small frame. Her hair hung in ropes across her face, dripping onto the sand. She didn't speak, just stared at me through the curtain of hair. I stood slowly, hands open. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked. "Are you hurt?" She didn't move. I took a step forward. She turned and ran, not toward the dunes, but into the woods. I chased her, flashlight bouncing wildly. But by the time I got to the tree line, she was gone. No footprints, no sound, just rain dripping from the branches. I stayed there a long time, sweeping the beam in slow arcs, willing her to appear again. But she didn't. When I got back to camp, the shoe was gone. The next morning, I hiked out early and went straight to the ranger station. I described what I'd seen, the voice, the shoe, the girl. The ranger behind the desk, an older guy with sun-damaged skin and a voice like sandpaper, listened patiently. "No missing kids reported recently," he said. "Not in years," I insisted. Told him to check again. Told him I wasn't the kind of guy to hallucinate. He tapped his keyboard, brows furrowed. After a moment, he turned the screen toward me. "This the girl?" he asked. My stomach dropped. It was a black and white photo, a school portrait. Same face, same hair, same faint tilt of the head. "Yeah, that's her." The ranger looked at me for a long time. Then he leaned back and exhaled slowly. Her name was Emily Reyes. She drowned in the bay, 1992. And here's the thing that made my blood run cold. He tapped the keyboard again, pulled up a time-stamped photo, a digitized scan of the original incident report. The recovery time listed 2:13 a.m. I should have left that morning, packed up, hiked out, driven anywhere that didn't have salt, wind, and wet sand, and the sound of a dead girl calling my name. But I didn't. I told the ranger thank you, took the info down like I was going to report something, but instead, I went back. I didn't even hesitate, like something had hooked into me. The thing is, and I didn't admit this until much later, a part of me needed it to be real. Not ghosts, not spirits, but the idea that someone saw me. Something out there, even if it didn't make sense, was looking directly at me. Not through me, not past me. Not like my ex did when I broke down after Dad died, or my old boss, or the friends who stopped returning calls. That little girl looked right at me, and I couldn't leave her. The moment I got back to camp, I knew something was off. My tent zipper was halfway down. I was sure I'd closed it. Inside, nothing was taken, but something had been moved. My sleeping bag, it was rolled back, and in the center of the foam mat was a small, wet handprint. Just one, palm down, fingers slightly spread. It wasn't muddy. It was water. As if someone had rested their soaked hand there and pulled it away without leaving a smudge. I stared at it for a long time, long enough that the light started to change. Around me, the woods grew darker. The fire pit was cold. The silence returned, the kind that doesn't feel like silence at all, but more like a breath being held. I didn't sleep that night. I sat outside the tent with the flashlight in one hand and my camp knife in the other, barely blinking. 2:13 a.m. came, and this time, the voice didn't call from a distance. It whispered directly behind me. "Help me." I spun, flashlight beam jerking through the dark, but there was no one there. No footprints in the sand, no rustling in the trees. But the fire flared suddenly, a short burst, like someone had thrown something in. When I looked, there was something nestled in the coals, a small toy, a red plastic boat, melted slightly along one side. My dad used to take me fishing when I was little. I had that same toy, same make, same color. I hadn't seen it in 20 years. I never brought it on this trip. I woke up sometime around dawn, still sitting in the chair, heart racing from a dream I couldn't remember. The red boat was gone. I checked the fire pit, the sand, even the tent. Nothing. But my socks were wet. My sleeping bag, too damp, as if I'd tracked in water. But there'd been no rain. That day, I tried to distract myself. Hiked inland a few miles. Took photos of moss-covered logs and old washed-out signs. Ate trail mix like it mattered. But the tension followed me. A pressure behind the eyes. Like a migraine building. Like my brain was straining to stay tethered. I started second-guessing everything. Had I really seen her that clearly? Had I really heard her voice? Was I dreaming that night too? Or was this something worse, something internal? My dad's voice echoed in my mind. Isolation bends your sense of time, son. Watch for it. He used to say that when we'd hike up into the Cascades. Said it wasn't ghosts people feared in the woods, it was themselves. I thought maybe he was right. Maybe this was just grief, manifesting. Maybe. But when I got back to camp that evening, the shoe had returned. Not near the fire this time, but inside the tent, placed gently on my pillow. Same soaked red canvas, same tilt. And underneath it, tucked like a note, was an old photograph, curled at the edges, faded to a bluish tint. It showed a man I didn't recognize standing by a canoe, smiling awkwardly. And next to him, the girl. Same face, same green dress, but in the photo, she was smiling. On the back, scribbled in faded pen, Nehalem Bay, 1992. Last trip. My hands shook so badly I dropped it. I didn't eat that night, didn't make a fire. I just sat on the beach, staring at the water. The waves came in slow and deliberate, like they were trying not to disturb something below. I stayed there until the wind picked up, and the cold started biting into my spine. I didn't want to go back to the tent, but when I finally did, the tent was zipped shut, fully. I stopped. I hadn't zipped it. Inside, the air felt colder. Not outside cold, still cold, like the air wasn't moving. And on the wall of the tent, right where the moonlight hit, were 3 more handprints, all small, all wet, all facing inward. At 2:13 a.m., I sat outside with the flashlight off, daring her to come back. This time, I didn't hear her. I felt her. The shift in pressure behind me. The the sudden warmth of breath on the back of my neck. I turned slowly. She was there, standing just past the fire pit. Her face wasn't wet this time. It was pale, empty, eyes too wide, like she was seeing through me. But she didn't move. I took a step forward. She blinked once, then turned and began walking, not running, just walking toward the tree line. This time, I followed. The woods swallowed her whole. I pushed through branches, roots, brambles. The flashlight flickered twice, and then I saw at a clearing I hadn't noticed before. At the center was a small, rotted dock, half collapsed, jutting into a shallow inlet. Next to it was an old canoe, overturned, half buried in reeds, and beside it, a metal sign. Faded, white paint. Closed accident site 1992. I turned in a slow circle. The air smelled like rust and salt. That's when I noticed the logs. 5 of them, all arranged in a circle, and on each one resting on the center was a child's item. A shoe, a jacket, a broken toy, a crumpled photo, a plastic boat, all water damaged, all old. I stumbled back, flashlight catching the bark. Each log had a name carved in. One of them read, Emily Reyes. Below it, 2:13 a.m. I ran. Didn't pack, didn't think, just ran. Didn't stop until I saw my car through the trees. But before I opened the door, I turned. Just once. And I swear to God, just past the edge of the trees, where the sand turned to grass. She was standing there again, not alone. 4 other children beside her, all soaking wet, all watching silently, all waiting. It's been 2 weeks since I left. I check the clock every night now. No matter where I am, no matter how tired I am at exactly 2:13 a.m., I wake up, and the sheets are always damp. And sometimes, on the floor by the bed, that little red shoe. She never moved, just stared like she wasn't waiting to be rescued, but remembered. No shouting, no tension, just a clear sky, our boots moving in sync, and the crunch of pine needles underfoot. Then I glanced back to make a dumb joke about her pace, and she was gone. Not lagging behind, not stopping to tie her shoe, just gone, like a light turned off mid-sentence. We'd been hiking Larch Mountain's lesser-known Eastern Trail, east of Portland, past the main lookout. Dana had found it on some backcountry forum, quiet, barely trafficked, but still scenic. That's what she liked, places that made you feel like you were alone in the world. I used to like that too. It was our 6th anniversary. We'd planned a weekend off-grid, no cell service, no signal, just us and the trees. She packed us homemade granola and those little cold brew cans she loved. We left the trailhead around 10 a.m. The weather was cool, misty in the shadows, but clear. No one else had signed the logbook before us that morning. That detail would come back later. So would everything else. By noon, we were deep in the woods, far past the switchbacks. I remember thinking the silence felt thick, not peaceful, but padded, like something was absorbing the sound. Even our footsteps felt quieter. Dana didn't seem to notice. She kept stopping to take photos, not of views, but little things. Fungus on a log, a perfectly curved fern, a patch of soil where animal prints crossed each other like old scars. I should have known something was off, not because of the woods, because of me. My heart was racing, no reason. My hands felt damp, though the air was dry. I'd done harder hikes, but that day, I kept glancing behind me like we were being followed. Around 2 p.m., we stopped for water. Dana sat on a flat rock, flipping through the trail map. I remember her saying, "This part curves east, right? The sun should be behind us soon." I nodded, distracted. There was something about the trees ahead, a narrow opening between them, too uniform, like a path that wasn't a path. I didn't like it. We started walking again, single file now. The trail was tighter, framed by those same symmetrical trees. I let her lead. Then, maybe 5 minutes later, I passed a fallen log and looked over my shoulder to say something stupid. I still remember the joke. If a couple hikes in the woods and no one hears the boyfriend make a pun, is he still annoying? But Dana wasn't there. I froze. It took me a second. I even chuckled, thinking she ducked behind a tree to mess with me. "All right, cool prank," I called. Silence. I backtracked slowly, called her name, then louder, then loud enough to make birds lift off branches. Nothing. No crunch of leaves, no laughter, not even a shift in the wind. Her footsteps behind mine were still fresh in the dirt, but they just stopped. No scuff, no turn-off, just gone, like the earth decided to swallow her whole and seal back over. I ran back down the trail, then forward again, yelling until my throat burned. I checked my watch. Only 3 minutes had passed. 3 minutes. I must have hiked a mile in both directions, veering off trail, clawing through brambles and underbrush, leaving bright orange flagging tape in my wake. That stuff was in her pack, not mine. I had nothing, just a half-empty water bottle and a phone with no signal. By the time I made it back to the trailhead, it was nearly dark. My voice was hoarse. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't put the keys in the ignition. I called 911 from the ranger station payphone. They arrived fast. A full team, dogs, thermal drones, volunteers. I answered their questions 100 times. No, we didn't fight. Yes, I checked for prints. No, I didn't hear a scream. No, I didn't see anyone else. Just Dana. And then not Dana. The search lasted 6 days. They covered 12 square miles. Helicopters, grid sweeps, K9s, even cadaver dogs. Nothing. Then, on day 7, a ranger named Bill came to my cabin just before sunset. His face looked pale under his beard. "We found something," he said quietly. "We need you to come confirm." I expected the worst. A body, a shoe. I didn't expect what they showed me. 7 miles from the trail, Dana and I were on way beyond any logical path, up a steep ravine with no trail markers. They found her backpack. Zipped, clean, no scratches, no mud, no sign of weather wear. It looked like she'd just set it down for lunch. And on top, placed neatly, were her hiking boots. Both of them, upright, filled to the brim with soil. Rich, black soil, packed tight, not dumped, carefully placed, like a planter. I touched them. The laces were tied. Her socks were inside. There were no tracks leading to or from the scene. The brush was undisturbed. That's when something shifted in me. Up until then, I'd been frantic, devastated, in disbelief. But in that moment, standing in the quiet with the sun setting through the trees, her boots staring back at me like something posed them, I felt it. This wasn't just a disappearance. This was intentional. The boots weren't dropped. They were displayed. I looked around. There was no wind, no bird song, not even the distant hum of cars. It felt like I was being watched. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch of the ranger's cabin with a blanket wrapped around me, Dana's backpack at my feet. I kept waiting for something, a sound in the trees, a footstep in gravel, but all I heard was the steady creak of wood under me and my own breath. Then, just before dawn, I remembered something. When we were hiking, Dana had pointed out a broken tree about halfway up the slope, one that forked into a V. She said it looked like a wishbone. I'd barely registered it, But the photo they showed me of her backpack, that same V-shaped tree was behind it, which meant she'd somehow impossibly ended up miles away and remembered that exact tree. Or someone wanted me to believe she had. But that wasn't the part that kept me up. It was what I saw when I re-zoomed the photo on my phone the next morning. Just behind the tree, tucked barely into frame, was the edge of a jacket. Dark green, canvas, the same jacket I'd worn during the hike. But I'd never gone to that spot. Not once. Not until the ranger took me there. At first, I convinced myself it was a ranger's jacket. Maybe Bill's. Maybe another searcher's. Could have been anything. But then I found the photo Dana took on our hike, the one she snapped of me near that bent pine where the moss grew in a perfect circle. I wore that jacket. Same rips along the cuff, same faded shoulder seams. Even the broken zipper loop where I'd tied fishing line months ago. It was mine, no doubt. So why was it in the photo from a place I'd never been? The official story never changed. Dana vanished. No signs of foul play. No evidence of struggle. No physical injuries reported. Because, well, there was no body. Her case went cold within weeks. A missing person file, some news blurbs, a few Reddit threads that speculated she faked her death or ran off. But none of them knew Dana. She was curious, obsessive about details. She'd never leave her gear behind, never walk barefoot through thick forest, never leave me without a word. And most importantly, she wouldn't have taken that photo, the one with the jacket, the one found on a camera we never brought. That was the next twist. I'd forgotten about the trail camera one we kept in our camping kit. Dana liked to mount it to trees while we hiked, hoping to catch deer, owls, anything alive. I found it weeks later, deep in the backpack they'd returned to me. It wasn't supposed to be there. It still had battery. There were 38 photos. Most were what you'd expect, blurry deer legs, Dana laughing by the creek, a close-up of her squinting at the lens. Then, photo 34, a wide shot, evening light. The camera had been moved. I didn't recognize the bird, surroundings. It was taken from ground level, pointed slightly upward, aimed at the base of the tree where her boots were found. There was her backpack. There were the boots, soil still inside, and on the edge of the frame, just like I remembered the sleeve of my jacket, bent slightly, as if resting on a knee. No face, no hands, just the outline. But I hadn't been there. I knew I hadn't. I stared at that image for hours, flipped it, brightened it. I even uploaded it to a forum, asking if anyone could identify the gear or setting. Nothing helped, until photo 36. It was nearly pitch black. You could barely make out shapes. But in the far right, something was reflected in a sliver of pooled water, a warped, hazy figure. I zoomed in until the pixels broke apart. It looked like a man squatting. Same outline as me, same jacket, same haircut. But the head was turned, looking directly at the camera. I never saw that camera. Never knew where it had been set up. I should have stopped there. I should have deleted the files and thrown the SD card into the Columbia River. Instead, I printed that image, blew it up, hung it in my apartment next to the whiteboard I'd started using to make sense of it all. Trail maps, circled timelines, my last GPS ping, her step count from my phone's shared fitness tracker. I became obsessed with reconstructing that hike, second by second. I didn't eat much. I forgot to shower. I started hearing creaks in the apartment, like someone was stepping just outside the door. My therapist told me it was unresolved grief, PTSD. Sometimes, the brain needs a pattern, even if the pattern is pain. But it wasn't just in my head. 3 weeks ago, I drove back to Larch Mountain. I waited until dusk, when the trails were empty. I didn't sign the logbook. I didn't tell anyone. I followed the same path we took, the ridge that curved east, the narrow section with those symmetrical trees. I stopped at the exact place I lost her, and I stood there, still, breathing through my nose, letting the forest settle. Then I said her name. Nothing at first. Then, from somewhere deeper in the trees, I heard leaves crunch. Once, then twice. I didn't move. "Dana?" I called out, not expecting anything. The crunching stopped. That should have scared me, but it didn't. It felt like progress, like something was listening. I stepped off trail, through brambles, past moss-slick rocks. I followed the faint direction of the sound. Every few minutes I stopped and listened. At some point, the sun disappeared. Fog crept in, cold and wet. The woods got dense. Then I saw it. A flash of white fabric pinned between two trees. I thought it was trash at first, but when I got closer, I saw what it was. One of Dana's socks, clean, rolled, tucked into a crack of bark like someone had placed it there for me to find. My mouth went dry. My ears started ringing. I turned around slowly. There, about 10 feet back, was another one, and then behind that, something else. A boot print, barely visible in the soft soil. The same tread Dana's boots had. It was facing the wrong way toward the trail. Not away, like someone retracing steps, or waiting. I crouched to examine it closer. That's when I noticed something off about the tread. The soil inside the print was darker, richer, the same packed soil that had filled her boots. Then I saw something worse. Inside the toe of the print was a sliver of a fingernail, still attached to skin. My vision swam. I stood up too fast. The forest tilted, and then I heard it, a faint shuffle behind me. Then a sound I hadn't heard in weeks. A voice, quiet, female. "You found it." That's all she said. I turned, heart hammering. No one. Just fog. But the voice was Dana's. Calm, like she wasn't afraid. Like she'd been waiting. I don't remember getting back to the car. I don't remember driving home. I just know I woke up in my bed the next morning, with dirt on my socks and a smear of pine sap on my hands. I checked the back seat. Dana's backpack was sitting there, but it wasn't zipped anymore. Inside were the trail camera, the photos, the socks, and something new. My jacket, the one I'd seen in the photo, but it was soaked through with cold water and smelled like soil. And in the left pocket was her wedding ring. We weren't married yet. Hadn't even gotten engaged. I never told anyone this. Not the Rangers, not her parents, not my friends. Because if I say it out loud, it becomes real. And if it's real, then something else is too. Something in those woods wanted her gone, not dead, not missing, just taken. And whatever it was, it's watching me now. It let me find her trail. It gave me the clues. It wants me to follow. Every night since, I hear something outside my apartment. It never knocks. It never speaks. But this morning, there was soil on my doorstep. Fresh, black, packed tight inside my hiking boots, neatly placed side by side. The first knock came at 4:44 a.m. 3 sharp, deliberate bangs like knuckles rapping bone against the inside of the wall just inches from my bed. I didn't move at first, just listened, half asleep, not trusting what I'd heard. But when it came again, the same rhythm, the same spot, a little louder, I sat up fast enough to make my neck pop. The room was still. My breath fogged slightly in the cold air. I leaned forward and pressed my palm against the cabin's inner wall. Nothing. Just old wood, dry and silent. But my gut was already tight. Let me rewind. My name's Ben. I'm 34, freelance web designer, city-raised and socially burnt out. After my third panic attack in 4 months, I decided to unplug, go full ghost mode, and rent a remote cabin for a week. No clients, no deadlines, just trees, mist, and silence. I found the place on an obscure cabin rental app. No reviews, just a single photo, a narrow A-frame, tucked in thick pine, with a wood-burning stove, a single twin bed, and what the listing called legacy architecture, $29 a night. I booked it on impulse. Tillamook Forest was a 4-hour drive from Portland. By the time I got near the final turnoff, my cell service dropped to nothing. That last mile was barely a road, just wet gravel winding through dense green fog. The cabin itself looked exactly like the photo, maybe even older. Dark green siding stained with moss, a steep triangular roof, and windows crusted in dirt. The front steps sagged like bad knees. A rusted horseshoe was nailed above the door. Inside, it was sparse but livable. A single room with a low, sloped ceiling, bed against the far wall, wood stove on the left, tiny kitchenette on the right. No TV, no Wi-Fi. A manual lantern hung from a hook by the window. The closet was what caught my eye first. It was narrow, almost coffin-sized, and wedged in beside the bed like an afterthought. The doorknob was brass, cold to the touch, and left a faint greenish film on my palm. I opened it. Empty. Just exposed studs, old insulation, and a faint odor, mildew, and something else I couldn't name. Like rusted pennies and wet fur. Still, I wasn't there for luxury. I unpacked, made a fire, and cracked a local IPA while watching the mist crawl outside. By nightfall, I was half convinced I'd made the right call. Silence like this, it felt like oxygen after drowning. But then came the knocking. That first night, after it woke me, I stayed up till dawn with the lantern on. I kept staring at the wall, waiting for it again. I even tapped back a few times. Lightly, nothing. Daylight came, and with it, excuses. Maybe wood settling, a branch, an animal. I checked outside. No trees near that wall. No branches, no marks, no animals either. Just layers of wet pine needles and soil so soft you'd leave prints if you even stood still. I tried to brush it off. Spent the day reading and exploring the edge of the nearby creek. By sunset, I'd convinced myself it had been a dream. Stress, maybe. My brain detoxing from the city. But then the second night came. 4:44 a.m. On the dot. 3 knocks. Same rhythm, same wall. This time, I was ready. I'd set up my phone's voice recorder. I also brought an old GoPro I used to use for hiking vlogs, mounted it on a tripod in the corner, angled toward the bed and wall. I wanted proof. Not for anyone else, just to know I wasn't unraveling. Again, the knocks stopped as soon as I sat up. This time, I got up, turned on the lantern, and stared hard at the wall. I ran my hand along the boards. Nothing. No vibration. No warmth. No loose slats. I opened the closet and stepped inside. It was barely 3 feet deep. I had to crouch. The interior wood felt different. Rough. Splintery. There were old scratches down one side. Horizontal ones. About waist height. I ran my flashlight over them. They weren't random. They looked desperate, like claw marks. 5 deep ones, parallel, carved into the grain with something strong and uneven. That was the first time I felt real fear. When I stepped back into the room, I noticed something else. The camera, the GoPro, had shut off. I checked the battery. Fully charged. The memory card still in place. When I tried to replay the file, the screen froze. Corrupted. The voice memo on my phone? Just static. Not silence static. Like interference. Almost a low hum beneath it. I listened closely. Under the static was something rhythmic. Faint. 3 thuds. Then nothing. The next morning, I drove 15 miles to a general store in a tiny town called Fairhaven. There was one gas pump, one window, and a woman behind the counter who looked like she hadn't blinked in a while. I told her I was staying in one of the old cabins nearby the green A-frame, just off mile marker 39. Her face shifted like I'd pinched a nerve. She reached under the counter, grabbed a pack of menthols, and lit one with a hand that shook slightly. "You're in Albie Trent's place," she said, without looking at me. I asked who that was. She said Albie used to live in the cabin full-time, years ago. Quiet guy. Worked at the sawmill. Vanished one morning in 1996. Left his truck parked out front. Door locked from the inside. No sign of forced entry. Just gone. They found deep scratches inside the closet. Blood in the wall insulation. Never solved. The place sat empty for almost 2 decades. "I thought it burned down," she said, squinting. "Guess not." I asked if anyone else had stayed there since. She took a drag. Then, one couple. Back in 2014. Stayed one night. Left before sunrise. Said something was knocking behind the walls. I asked if it was rats, or plumbing, or heat stress in the wood. She just looked at me and said, "There's no plumbing." I left without buying anything. That night, I considered sleeping in the car, but part of me didn't want to give in. I was stubborn, or stupid, or maybe I just wanted answers. I set up both cameras again, GoPro and phone, one aimed at the wall, one at me, both plugged in. Fresh memory cards. I put an old analog watch on my wrist, no batteries to fail. Sat on the bed and waited. 4:44 a.m. 3 knocks. Not just from the wall, now from the closet. I froze. The doorknob turned. Not a full spin, just enough to click once. I picked up the flashlight with trembling hands and walked over. My mouth was dry. The air felt heavy, like the pressure dropped all at once. I opened the closet. Empty. But the inside had changed. The scratches were deeper now. There were more of them. New ones, fresh enough to leak sap from the grain. And this time, there was something else. Pressed into the back panel was a handprint. Human-sized. Palm, smeared into the wood, like someone had leaned hard and braced themselves, or tried to push through. I backed away, shut the door, locked it. Both cameras had died again. I checked the GoPro file. The first 5 minutes were intact. Then the feed cut to black. Before it went out, you could hear one thing, a soft clicking noise, like fingernails. The phone audio, same static. Only this time, I swear there was something behind the hum. A voice, only 3 words. Whispered, "Let me out." I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in the corner with the flashlight and watched the closet like it might breathe. By morning, the watch on my wrist was still stuck at 4:44. I packed everything in a frenzy. Cameras, chargers, my duffel bag, and shoved it all into the back seat. I didn't even bother folding the blanket. I just needed distance. Trees, road, noise, anything. I pulled out onto the gravel road, expecting relief, but it never came. The fog was thicker than before, almost unreal. It pressed against the windshield in heavy waves. I drove slow, real slow, but the road just didn't end. I drove for maybe 20 minutes. Then I saw it. The same mile marker, 39. The same split rail, fence, same crooked mailbox rusted open like a mouth. And behind it, the cabin. I hit the brakes so hard, the tires skidded sideways. I got out, heart pounding, and checked my GPS. No signal. I restarted the phone. Still nothing. But it showed the time. 4:44 a.m. Again, no way. I'd been driving for over an hour. I got back in, slammed the door, and drove again. This time faster. Branches scraped the side mirror. My back tires fishtailed around the gravel. I didn't care. I passed the same broken birch tree, then the same dead-end sign, bent at the corner. Then mile marker 39, the cabin. Again. My hands started to shake. My breath felt shallow, like I was trapped in a loop with no exit, and something behind me was slowly catching up. Eventually, I stopped fighting it. I pulled back into the gravel drive and just sat behind the wheel for a long time. Eventually, I went back inside. There's a moment where fear folds in on itself, where your body just gives up. That's where I was. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just walked back into the cabin like a dog returning to its crate after running in circles. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it, except for the closet. The door was open, not wide, just cracked, like it was waiting. I left it. I sat on the bed with the flashlight gripped in both hands and watched the shadows stretch as the sun went down again. When 4:44 came, I didn't even check the clock. The knocking came louder this time, and not just from the wall. It echoed from inside the room. I turned to the closet just in time to see something pull back from the crack in the door. I didn't see its face. Only a hand, fingers, long and thin, grayish, with nails that looked cracked down the middle. It gripped the edge of the closet door, then slowly slid back inside, as if it sensed I was watching. I didn't move for hours. Somewhere around dawn, I must have passed out, because I woke on the floor with my head resting against the frame. The closet was closed again, but something was wrong. The air felt heavier, like the walls were closer than before. Then I noticed my duffel bag wide open. Everything inside had been turned over. My camera's memory cards were gone. The GoPro was missing. My phone was dead. And when I plugged it in, the battery icon just blinked empty. Over and over. No charge. Then I found the notebook. It was lying on the windowsill. I hadn't brought it. Its cover was cracked leather, brittle and warped. Inside, the pages were filled with jagged handwriting in pencil. Dozens of pages. Some torn. Some wet. The first line read, "If you're reading this, it already started." I sat down on the floor with my back against the wall and read the entire thing. It was written by someone named Albie Trent, the man who vanished in 1996. He described the same knocking, the same time, 4:44 a.m., always from inside the walls. He wrote that it followed a pattern: 3 knocks, then silence, then a voice he couldn't quite understand. He thought it was a trapped animal at first, then a squatter, then something else. But the part that made my stomach turn was this: it doesn't want the house, it wants the person. The house is just the skin. He claimed the knocking wasn't sound, it was memory. It was erasing time, repeating moments. He said after the 4th night, he started forgetting things. Whole days would vanish. And the knocking? It started coming from inside him. I closed the notebook and immediately got sick. I made it outside in time to vomit near the edge of the porch. That's when I noticed the second set of footprints in the mud. Bare feet, narrow, toes splayed wide like a child's. They circled the porch and ended at the front door, but none walked away. I told myself I was hallucinating. Stress, isolation, no sleep. I told myself none of it was real. That night, I locked myself in the car, but the car wouldn't start. Not even a click, just silence. I laid back in the seat with the blanket over me and stared at the ceiling. At exactly 4:44, the radio turned on by itself. Static, then faint humming. Not music, just a soft, slow melody. Familiar in the worst kind of way, like something from childhood you don't remember until the nightmare starts. Then the knocks. This time, they came from the roof. I bolted upright, looked through the windshield. Nothing. Then, the driver's side mirror shifted, just slightly, like something had brushed it. And on the inside of the windshield, right where the frost had gathered, there was a handprint. My size. But the fingers were reversed, like someone inside me had pressed outward. By morning, I had no plan left. I went back in the cabin and lit the stove just to feel something warm. My hands shook so bad, I dropped the lighter 3 times. I barely noticed the burns on my fingers. The closet door was wide open again. Inside, I found my camera, just sitting on the floor. I picked it up and flipped through the photos. Dozens I didn't remember taking. All of me, sleeping, eating, sitting in the chair. Some through the window, some from inside the cabin. One of me standing over the bed with my eyes open, holding the flashlight, but the timestamp showed it was taken while I was asleep. The last photo, it was inside the closet, facing the wall, but in the corner of the frame, just barely visible, was a face. Not fully formed, just the edge of a cheek, a mouth half open, black gums, no eyes. I dropped the camera. I left the cabin and walked. I didn't take the car. I didn't pack. I didn't look back. I walked until my legs gave out and my vision blurred. Eventually, a road appeared. A truck passed. I flagged it down. They took me to a clinic. I gave a fake name, said I got lost hiking. I haven't been back. But I dream about it, every night, always at 4:44. There's always a knocking, soft and polite, just under my skin. Sometimes I wake with scratches on my chest. Parallel, 5 of them. But the worst part isn't the dreams. It's the memory gaps. I keep finding photos on my phone I don't remember taking. Short videos of me sitting, blinking, staring at the wall. And in one of them, only 2 seconds long, I'm whispering something. Just 3 words. Let me out. The voice on the GoPro whispered my full name. Not just the first, not a nickname. My entire name, clear, deliberate, like someone had leaned into the mic. I hadn't said it aloud all weekend. Neither had Josh. We were 40 feet underground when it was recorded. Let me back up. I'm Eric. I'm 21. Outdoor rec major at Oregon State, 2 quarters away from transferring. That weekend was supposed to be simple, quick guys' trip to Central Oregon before finals week hit. One last hike before the grind. Just me, Josh, and his GoPro. We'd been talking about checking out Boyd Cave for months, a mile-long lava tube system outside Bend, barely marked on any map. Not a tourist trap, just raw earth, cold, tight, damp. The kind of place where you feel your heartbeat in your ears. Josh brought the gear, headlamps, backup batteries, gloves, and a pack with water and trail mix. I brought caffeine tabs and a thermal hoodie. The plan was to hike in early, film the descent, get a few cool shots of the underground lava flows, and be back at the Airbnb by dark. We pulled up around 11 a.m. The air smelled sharp, like pine bark and cooled rock. The sky was overcast. It was early spring, but patches of snow still clung to the edges of the tree line. We parked just off the Forest Service road and hiked the quarter-mile in. No other cars, just us. The entrance was easy to miss, a short metal ladder leading down into a jagged black mouth in the ground. The earth around it was fractured basalt, like cooled tar with veins running through it. Josh went first, GoPro mounted on his chest. I followed, ducking down into the dark. The temperature dropped hard after the first 10 feet, from mid-50 seconds above ground to maybe high 30 seconds below. My breath fogged as we descended. The tunnel stretched long and narrow like a throat. Every step echoed. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow, rhythmic ticks. Our headlamps cut through the black in narrow cones, revealing walls that shimmered with ancient mineral buildup. At first, it was awesome, quiet, still. The kind of silence that makes you whisper for no reason. We hiked slowly, maybe 300 yards in. The tube widened, then narrowed again. Some places forced us to crouch. Josh kept stopping to pan the GoPro, getting shots of the reflective rock, our breath in the air, the occasional glint of quartz. Then we heard it. A third voice, soft, not loud, just present. Like someone behind us said, "Hold up." We both stopped immediately. I turned around, light scanning the tunnel we'd just walked. Nothing. Josh whispered, "Did you hear that?" I nodded. Sounded like someone said, "Yeah." I thought maybe we passed someone. I shook my head. Nobody parked out front. Nobody passed us. We waited a minute. Called out once, just a, "Hey, anyone back there?" sort of thing. Silence. The weirdest part? The echo didn't match. Usually when you talk in those tunnels, your voice bounces. That's just how lava tubes are built. Sound travels weird. But this? No bounce. Just dead air. Josh looked unsettled. "Let's give it 5. If nobody shows, we keep going." We waited. 5 minutes. No sound. No echo of footsteps. No lights. He shrugged it off. I tried to. We pressed deeper. But the vibe changed after that. Not instantly, more like the way cold water creeps into your boots. Every 20 feet or so, I thought I saw movement at the edge of my headlamp. A slight shift in shadow, just as I turned my head. Like something stepping back, just out of range. At one point, Josh said, "Did you just tap me?" I hadn't. I was a full 4 feet behind him. But I lied and said maybe, because I didn't want to stop. There's a weird thing about fear underground. It doesn't rise up like it does in the dark woods. It presses in. Like the rock itself is aware of you, and it wants you to remember where you are. We made it maybe halfway in before calling it. Josh was, acting jittery, and I felt like I couldn't catch a full breath. The cave seemed smaller on the way back, the walls tighter. My knees started scraping the sides without me even realizing I was drifting. The climb out was harder, not physically, just mentally. My hands felt too big for the ladder rungs. The sunlight above looked distant. When I finally stood back on the surface, it felt wrongly bright, like I'd just surfaced from somewhere I shouldn't have gone. Back at the Airbnb, we didn't talk much. Ate chips, cracked beers, tried to laugh it off. It wasn't until later that night that Josh opened the GoPro files. We were sitting on the couch, screen mirroring to the TV, just scrolling through shots. Most of it was normal, walking, breathing, the occasional, "Dude, look at that" moment. Then came the part with the voice. Josh paused the playback, rewound, and boosted the volume. It's right after we round a bend. Josh says, "Looks like this part widens up a bit." Then a third voice says, "Hold up." Clear, male, closer than we remembered. Josh and I locked eyes. We played it again, slower, then again, and this time, I heard something else. Right before Josh says his line, there's a whisper, one that neither of us caught before. Faint, but clear enough once you knew where to listen. It says, Eric James Weston. My full name. Not just Eric. Not just Weston. All three. Josh's jaw tightened. Did you say your full name at some point? I shook my head. No, not once. Maybe I said it? You've never called me that in your life. He scrubbed through the footage. Nothing else strange. But the clip, with the name we played it 20 times, it didn't change. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept playing it over in my mind. Not just the voice, the tone. It wasn't yelling. It wasn't even curious. It was intimate. Like it already knew me. At 3:12 a.m., I sat up and checked the front door. Still locked. The GoPro was charging on the kitchen counter. I pressed play on the clip one last time. When it whispered my name, I thought, just for a second, I heard breathing after it. Like someone exhaling next to the mic. I turned off the TV. Didn't sleep at all. The next morning, Josh told me he dreamt about the cave. Said he was stuck halfway down the tunnel. Couldn't move. Couldn't speak. And something was whispering in his ear, something that sounded wet. I didn't tell him, but I had the exact same dream. Word for word. I didn't mean to play the clip again. It just started. I'd left the GoPro charging on the kitchen counter, but when I came back from the shower, the TV was already on. The file was looping. That same voice, soft, low, familiar, whispering my full name, Eric James Weston. Then breathing. I froze in the doorway, towel still around my shoulders. For a second, I thought Josh was messing with me. But he was gone, ran to get coffee 20 minutes earlier. His keys and jacket were gone. My reflection in the TV screen stared back at me, mouth slightly open, like it wanted to say something but didn't remember how. I unplugged the HDMI cable, but the audio kept going for another 5 seconds before the screen went black. That's when I noticed the timestamp. 4:44 a.m. The file said it was recorded that morning, but we'd been asleep. When Josh came back, I told him to sit down. He thought I was hungover until he saw the file name blinking on the screen. He played it once, then twice, then scrubbed frame by frame, like maybe he'd find a glitch that explained it. But there was only darkness, breathing, and the whisper, the same whisper, my name again. He tried to laugh it off, some kind of bug, he said, a corrupted timestamp. Maybe the GoPro recorded when we imported the files. But even as he said it, his hands were shaking. I asked him if he ever used my full name when tagging footage. He said no. Then I asked if he'd dreamed anything weird. He stopped talking. His coffee sloshed slightly in his hand. Finally, he said, I dreamt you were calling me from the cave entrance, but you didn't sound right. Like your voice was stuck halfway in your throat. I didn't tell him mine was the same dream, except I wasn't calling him. I was trying to warn him. We left Bend that afternoon, heading north. I thought getting distance from the cave would help, but every few miles, Josh would check the rear view like he was expecting headlights behind us. There never were any. By the time we hit Salem, he looked gray, feverish. I offered to drive. He didn't answer, just muttered that we shouldn't have gone that deep. When I finally pulled over for gas, he was staring at his phone screen, blank white. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "It said your name again." I grabbed his phone. The Notes app was open, an empty document except for a single line at the top. Eric James Weston, typed in all caps. He swore he hadn't written it. I believed him. That night, we crashed at my apartment. Neither of us spoke much. I left the GoPro in my duffel, zipped shut, buried under laundry. At 4:43 a.m., my phone alarm went off. I hadn't set one. And then a knock. Not on the door, not on the wall, under the bed. 3 slow thuds, wood flexing against the floorboards. I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my phone, flashlight, and dropped to the floor. Nothing. Dust. Extension cords. The base of the nightstand. But when I sat back up, my phone screen was still on. Voice recorder app. Running. It said, recording 1 seconds. Then it glitched. Paused. Resumed. Playback showed only static. And a single whisper. Hold up. Josh's voice. The next morning, I drove straight to his dorm. His roommate said Josh had left around 5 a.m. Said he had to go fix something. Never came back. I called his phone. Straight to voicemail. By evening, his mom texted me asking if I'd seen him. I didn't answer. I don't remember the next 2 days clearly. Somewhere in there, I went back through the GoPro footage again, every file, every corrupted segment. Half the videos were blank, but one of them had been renamed automatically by the camera software. It was called BOYD, Eric, Final, MP4. I opened it. The clip started in total darkness, like the lens cap was still on. Then, a faint orange glow appeared, headlamp light flickering across basalt walls. My own breathing. But it wasn't from our trip. It was new. You can tell by the way the sound bounces, it's too close, too hollow, like the tunnel's smaller. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Soft. Bare. Coming toward the camera. The voice followed. Not whispering this time. Muttering. Repeating. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. Then my own voice answered, cracked and distant. I'm right here. I slammed the laptop shut so fast, the hinge snapped. That night, I dreamed of the cave again, but this time I was holding the camera. The beam of light showed Josh ahead of me, crawling through a narrow passage. He kept turning around, saying, "Almost there," but every time he faced me, his mouth didn't move. The words came from the dark behind him. When I woke, my throat hurt. I checked the clock. 4:44 a.m. My phone was recording again. Not just audio this time, video. The camera faced my bed. I was sitting upright, eyes open, whispering. Over and over. Hold up. I didn't go back to class. Couldn't. The noise never stopped. Echoes in air vents, in running water, in the spaces between my footsteps. A geology professor I knew told me Boyd Cave's lower sections had been sealed after a collapse decades ago. You can't get past marker 12 anymore, he said. But I remember going farther, much farther. The thing that gets me now is how sure I was that it ended, that we turned around. But the last clip proves we didn't. There's 10 extra minutes of footage. It's just darkness, but the timestamp runs. At 4 minutes and 43 seconds, a faint light flickers, like a headlamp, tilting sideways. A whisper says my name. At 4 minutes and 44 seconds, there's a scream. Then silence. Josh never posted the footage, never backed it up. And yet somehow it keeps appearing different file names, different devices. Airdropped to my phone, synced to the cloud under folders I didn't create. Sometimes it's blank, sometimes it's me talking, sometimes it's that voice again, slower, softer, almost kind. Last night, I tried deleting everything. Every clip, every cache. The GoPro, the SD cards, all of it. Then I unplugged my router, threw the duffel into the dumpster behind the building, and watched the trash truck haul it off this morning. Thought that'd be it. But when I opened my laptop just now, a notification popped up. GoPro connected Boyd, cave device linked. I don't own one anymore. The screen froze, then the fan kicked on, and the speakers hissed with static. Through it came the same voice, clearer than it's ever been. Not recorded this time. Live. You never left, Eric. People online keep asking why I look so tired, why I flinch when someone says my full name, why I don't go hiking anymore. The truth is, I don't remember leaving the cave. I remember light, then cold, then this endless replay, like a tunnel with no exit. I used to think the voice was calling to me. Now I think it was calling through me. It's 4:43 a.m. again. The GoPro light just turned on in the corner of my room. There's breathing behind me, matching mine, and from the darkness, 3 slow words. Hold up, Eric. The first time I heard the voice, I thought I was losing my mind. It was early January, just past 3 a.m., and I was halfway through my patrol around Rim Drive at Crater Lake. Snowflakes drifted like ash in my headlights, and visibility had dropped to maybe 20 feet. I'd pulled over at Cloud Cap Overlook to stretch my legs, kill the engine, and let the silence do its thing, like I always did, when the weight of the mountain got too loud in my head. Then the radio crackled. Not the regular dispatch band. This was the old one, Ranger frequency from decades back. We keep it in the trucks for legacy logging. Nobody actually uses it anymore. But that night, clear as day through the static, came a man's voice. Broken, ragged. I can't get out. Is anyone hello? Please. I'm stuck. Then silence. I froze, just stared at the receiver. I hadn't touched that band in years. None of us had. It's basically a relic like the rotary phone they still keep mounted in the visitor center. I reached for the mic and keyed up. This is Ranger Connors, on night patrol. Can you hear me? What's your location? Nothing. Just a low, electrical hum, then a soft clicking sound, like a relay stuttering. Then, please, it's so cold. I can't get out. I can't, and it cut again. I stayed parked another 10 minutes, scanning the snow for signs of another vehicle, tail lights, boot tracks, heat shimmer, anything. But the only thing moving was the wind, curling snow across the road like smoke. Eventually, I switched bands and called it in to dispatch. They chalked it up to interference, maybe some old tower glitching from weather exposure. But when I mentioned the exact phrasing, I can't get out, there was a pause. Then they asked me to come in and file a full report. My name's Evan Connors, 36. Been with the National Park Service for 9 years. The last 4 posted here. Crater Lake, in the winter, is no joke. Most of the roads shut down due to snow. Rim Drive is mostly just a loop now for maintenance crews and ranger patrols like mine. You don't get a lot of visitors this time of year. That's half the appeal. You've got silence, reflection, a kind of stillness that either centers you or shatters you. I came here to be centered. My father was stationed here in the 70s. I've got a photo of him, big mustache, aviator jacket, standing next to his patrol Bronco, near the same overlook I stopped at that night. My mother kept it framed after he disappeared. He went missing in 1977. November. Same forest, same loop, no wreckage, no body, not even a radio call. Just gone. Park file says, presumed lost during winter storm. Search terminated after 18 days. I was born 2 months later. I didn't talk about that part when I applied to the Park Service. I never told the rangers I work with either. Some things you keep quiet. Some ghosts you carry in your own pack. But after that first transmission, I started wondering. The next night, I parked in the exact same spot. I flipped to the same band, waited. At 2:53 a.m., it came again. Still here, still stuck, cold. I can't. Where is the road? I was just on the road. This time, the voice cracked, more panicked than before. It was the same cadence, same man, like a recording. But not exactly. There were slight variations. A hitch in breath, a word said differently. It didn't feel like interference. I called it in again. This time, headquarters dispatched a mobile unit from the South Rim. They swept the area with thermal drones. Nada. No heat signatures, no signs of movement. Nothing on the FLIR. Still, the messages kept coming. Always between 2:45 and 3:15 a.m. Always the same phrases. I can't get out. Where's the road? Occasionally, he'd weep, gasp, repeat the name Helen or Ridge Marker 12. The weirdest part? There is no Ridge Marker 12 on Rim Drive. There used to be. Before 1980, the markers were different. There was a 12. But after some federal realignment, they changed. I only knew that because of an old topo map I found rolled up in the archive room, a dusty linen sheet from the 1970 seconds. It showed Ridge Marker 12 at a switchback that was wiped out in a rockfall years ago. That switchback's still there, abandoned, hidden under layers of snow and time. And that's where I went the night everything changed. I parked just shy of the old fire road and hiked in alone, mid-January, wind cutting through the pines like a scream. I had my thermal gear, a backup radio, a flare gun, and a GoPro clipped to my parka for documentation. I followed the coordinates from the old map. It took me an hour, maybe more. The snow deepened past my knees. My breath came in clouds. The light faded into that eerie blue twilight that happens right before true dark. At 3:02 a.m., my receiver chirped. I see lights. I think someone's coming. Please, just stay with me. I'm at the curve. The switchback. Ridge Marker 12. Please. I stopped walking. The signal was stronger, sharper. I pulled out my handheld triangulator. The needle was pointing east-northeast. Then it began spinning, slowly at first, then faster. I took a step forward, and the static grew louder. My ears began to ring. My fingers went numb even through the gloves. Then I heard it off to my left. Not on the radio. Real. Faint but unmistakable. Sobbing. A man's voice, maybe 30 feet ahead, just over the ridge line. I can't get out. I just need the road. I raised the flare gun, took a step toward the sound, and that's when I saw it. Just barely visible under a snowdrift, the edge of something metal. Rounded, rusted. A vehicle. I dropped to my knees and swept snow away with my arms, frostbitten fingers clawing at a door frame. The more I cleared, the more I saw. It was a white Ford Bronco, faded green NPS insignia on the side. I stared at the driver's door. The number printed below the seal was 7426B, my father's old unit. The door was locked from the inside. I stood there, kneeling in the snow beside the buried Bronco, completely still. My brain was trying to catch up to what my eyes already knew. The frame, the shape of the door, the rusted old NPS seal, it all matched the photo on my mother's dresser. That same Bronco, my father's, missing since 1977, and now it was here, under 10 inches of snow, in a spot no one had marked. No beacon, no tire tracks, no signs of impact. I tried the handle again. Still locked. I circled around to the passenger side. Same thing. Frozen shut. I pulled my multi-tool from my belt, jammed it into the seam, and popped the latch with a loud metallic crack. The door creaked open an inch, reluctant. Then another inch. And then, the smell hit me. Not rot, not decay, just old air, like the inside of a sealed basement, paper and mildew, and something faintly electric. Inside, everything looked preserved. The seat was cracked with age. The dash was warped from years of cold. A broken CB microphone dangled from the console. ice crusted over the steering wheel. And on the floor, under a tattered wool blanket, I saw a ranger's badge, half buried in dust. The nameplate corroded, but still legible. C. Connors. My hands trembled. I reached for my radio. Dispatch, this is Ranger Connors. I've found something. A vehicle. I think it's the signal cut out. Just static. I looked at the screen. No bars. No frequency. Just a blinking red light. Dead. My GPS unit flickered, then shut off completely. I was 11 miles from the main road. That's when the wind died. Like, entirely. Not slowed, not muffled, just stopped. The kind of stillness that makes your ears ring. That feels like pressure. And then I heard it again. Helen, please. I can't get out. There's snow in the door. The road was just here. The same voice, but not from the radio this time. It was coming from inside the Bronco. From the back seat, I spun around, pointed my flashlight in. Nothing. Just blankets, an old thermos, some paper maps curling at the edges. I scanned the trees, the ridge, my own boot tracks. There were only one set, mine, and they led in a perfect line back through the untouched snow. Except, they didn't lead all the way back. Just about 30 feet. Then they stopped, like I'd appeared there. I started walking back toward the fire road, fast. My heart was hammering, breath fogging thick in front of my face. Every branch crack felt like a gunshot. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see something standing there. But it was just the same lonely woods. But no matter how far I walked, the trees never changed. Same bend in the path, same broken trunk, same flicker of light catching on frost. At one point, I passed a tree with 3 distinct gashes in the bark, horizontal slashes, like claw marks. 20 minutes later, I passed it again. Then, again. I stopped, turned around, walked the opposite direction, counted my steps. Left boot, right boot, crunch, crunch, crunch. 30 steps in, I was staring at the same gashes. I started whispering to myself, "You're tired. You're in shock. Hypothermia messes with perception. This is just fatigue. You're looping. Just stop. Breathe." I dropped to my knees, trying to orient myself. Pulled out my phone. Dead. Battery was at 76% when I left the truck. I checked my watch. It said 3:1 a.m. Same minute I'd first heard the last radio call. I blinked. Still 3:1 a.m. I sat there in the snow for what felt like 20 minutes. When I looked again, still 3:1 a.m. I whispered, "This isn't happening." But my breath came out in a thick fog that didn't move. It just hovered, like the air wasn't flowing anymore. And then I saw the light, just ahead, through the trees. Faint, orange, flickering. I stood, followed it. It was an old ranger cabin. I didn't remember it on any map. Roof sagging under snow, wood faded to gray. A rusted antenna jutted from the chimney like a broken finger. A candle burned in the window. I pushed the door open slowly. Inside was warm. Not cozy, just not cold, like it had been heated recently. A cast iron stove crackled softly in the corner. A metal cot sat in the far wall with a wool blanket draped over it. And sitting at the desk was a radio. Same make and model from the 72nds. Tube-driven, cracked casing, wires exposed. It was on, hissing. I stepped closer. The voice started again. "I'm still here. Can anyone hear me? I was just on the road." The curve, Near marker 12, I saw lights. Please. I can't. And then I saw the photo, pinned above the desk, yellowed with time. A black and white image. Man in a ranger uniform. Thick mustache. Aviators. My father. Written in marker, November 1977, last rotation. And below that, in a second, faded scribble. Loop won't break, not unless he hears it from himself. I stared at the handwriting. It looked like mine, exactly like mine. Same slant, same spacing, same pressure on the downstrokes. I backed away, tripped over the cot, and saw what was underneath. A skeleton, curled in on itself, wrapped in a ranger parka, still clutching a flare gun, skull cracked at the temple. The badge was rusted, but barely legible. C. Connors. My voice caught in my throat. I stumbled back outside into the snow, gasping. The woods looked different now, brighter, but wrong. Too still, too symmetrical, like a mirrored image of itself. I ran, no direction, just away. Branches whipped my face, my lungs burned, and then I slammed into something solid. Metal, my truck, parked exactly where I'd left it at Cloud Cap Overlook. The sun was rising. My watch read 7:12 a.m. 4 hours had passed, but I had no memory of the return hike. The radio was silent. Dispatch confirmed I'd gone dark for exactly 4 hours. My GPS had dropped off, the map entirely. No signal, no trace. They filed it as environmental disorientation. But I never filed a report. Not about the Bronco, not about the cabin, not about the body. Because when we went back 2 days later, in daylight, there was nothing there. No tire tracks, no vehicle, no structure, no ridge marker 12. The snow was undisturbed. That was 3 months ago. The radio still goes off. Same time, same voice. And now, sometimes, late at night, the voice changes. It starts the same, I can't get out, but then it shifts. The phrasing, the inflection, like it's getting closer to my voice, like it's learning. And last week, it said something different. For the first time, it said, Evan, I need you to finish the loop. And then, silence. I haven't gone back up since, but I know I will, because last night I woke up with frost on my sheets, and the old ranger badge, my father's, was sitting on my nightstand, still cold to the touch.